I hope I'm audible to all of you. Yeah? Okay. Hello and welcome to this webinar series brought to you by SIAM VIT. I am 𝗕𝘃𝗦𝗰𝗀 and today I'll be showing you the basics of JavaScript for web development. And in the next webinar, I hope that will be on 11th, that is this coming Saturday, I'll be covering some advanced concepts of JavaScript. So stick with me from now till then and I'll try to cover as far as I can. Well, as long as people are still joining, I'll tell you a bit about SIAM and what we do here. Okay, so SIAM stands for Society for Industrial and Applied Mathematics. It's an international chapter with a populace of more than 14,000 individuals across the globe. It has presence only in 5 countries, with VIT being the only private institution in this elite group. Our objective is to advance the concepts of mathematics and computational science to engineering, industry, science, and society. Rest assured, math isn't all we do. We are a technical chapter and we dive into the various domains like AI, ML, web dev, app dev, etc. and aim to find technical solutions to real world problems. So, without talking more, let's get started. And also, I'm going to start off with complete basics. So, if you're already a programmer, that might be a little bit boring for you in the beginning, but by the end, get to more advanced topics or a little bit complications, you'll see the feel of a real JavaScript programmer. Alright? So let's get started. So in this session, I'm going to show you what is JavaScript and how it works, its elements, and the document object model. Apart from this, we'll see a project in which we'll add our JavaScript to our already existing HTML and CSS. And this topic ES6, which I'll be covering in the next video. Okay. But what is JavaScript? While HTML and CSS can be said as the nouns and adjectives for your web page, JavaScript can be similarly called the verbs because they are going to do the actions for your web page, right? They're the basics for the interactions. You can do a little bit interactions with CSS or just a bit with HTML by providing those hover properties as we have in CSS. But with JavaScript, the possibilities are endless. Alright? What will happen without this? Your page is just dead. It won't have any interaction with the user, so it's typically not even a page. Well, before jumping off to any of the concepts, I would like to also tell you how does JavaScript works in your browser. So whenever you open any website on your browser, there is a JS engine working behind the scenes, which processes your JavaScript codes, and then after that it shows up to you. Alright, it's then available for working. So Google Chrome has its engine named as V8 engine. Mozilla Firefox has SpiderMonkey. Microsoft Edge named its engine as Chakra, and Safari, well, it's just Safari. Alright, so these are the engines which takes in your code, and let's see how they works. So this is your code which you have written your code, or the JS file, script which you've uploaded on your website, and then it's passed into this JS engine, which the elements are a parser which checks the code line by line if the syntax is correct, and it throws an error if not, right? Then this complete code is converted into an abstract syntax tree, which then gets converted to a machine level code. Okay, so this is the basic flow of the abstract syntax tree. Whatever you write gets converted into this kind of a tree, and then it gets converted into the machine level language. Alright, so let's take a look at the features. First off, it's an interpreted programming language that is unlike C, C++, Java. You don't need a compiler. There's just an interpreter interpreting whatever the code you've executed. Alright, there's no mediocre stage in between. The compiler file is not created. It supports OOPS, that is the object-oriented programming solving. It supports that, but we'll dive more into it and see how does we mean by that. It's an untyped language. What does that mean? Well, whenever in C++ or Java, you might have seen that we start off our declaration or defining of variables by typing int or float, etc. Here, we don't need to do that. Everything is a variable, and that's why the data type of any variable is just var. VAR. It stands for variable, and numbers, strings, or Boolean, anything, it's just var that defines it all. Okay? It's totally client side, that means it doesn't involve the server. It's case sensitive, of course, and we mostly type this in camel case. Camel case means that whatever you type, it's in the form of this kind of a scheme. The first letter is going to be small, and to separate it from the rest of the words, the first letter of the next word is going to be capital. Like in this case C is capital, right? And how do you add JS to your HTML file? Well, with CSS, we've seen that the link tag is added normally to the head tag of a portion, but with JS, we normally tag this by the end of the body tag, just at the end tag of the body tag. Okay, why is that? Because you don't want your JS to load before your page, before your body does. Okay, CSS needs styling, it needs visual representation, but JavaScript is interactivity. When the page loads completely, when the user gets to see what is inside the page, then only we'll show our JavaScript, then only we'll enable our interactions, any alert boxes or any more pop-ups which we have to show it. Okay, so we add that script tag by the end of the body. Okay, well, if you're not a person to create any separate file for it, you don't need to worry. You're just going to add the script tag, and in between you can write all of your JS code. Okay, you don't need to connect a JS separate .js file. You can write in between the script tag, I'm sorry, as we did in the style tag with CSS. Okay, but it's always a good practice to add another file, because there's this concept of separation of concerns which we'll see afterwards. Okay, what are the data types? Well, in any other language there are lot of data types. There are Boolean, there are float, there are int, and many more. But in this, as I told you, they are normally variables, and in variables which we have numbers. Okay, so numbers are just any number. It can be a float, it can be an integer. There are no size barriers, there are no decimals which we have in other language. Okay, then there are strings. So strings is also another data type of JavaScript. There are booleans, and there are two more data types which you might have not seen in any other language. That is null and undefined, and there is a bit difference in these both, as we'll see afterwards. So before starting off, we'll go with strings, what they are and how they works. So you can put those strings between double quotes or single quotes, it really doesn't matter that much. Then for concatenation, you just have to add a plus sign in between two strings and it will concatenate it to you. Okay, so it's that simple. Also, if you'd like to add a separate inverted comma character or a backslash character inside your already existing string, that won't happen without an escape character. Okay, so what is this escape character and what does it do? Actually, if you add this inverted comma without this backslash, and here also this inverted comma without this backslash, what JavaScript would think is he who is a separate string, and this portion is an empty string, and it will skip must not be named in that case, because it will think that this is a string, okay, this is a string, and it will throw an error for this. But if you want to add this inverted comma inside your string, then you have to explain the JavaScript file that this particular character is not notation of ending or beginning of a string, but it's a part of the string. Okay, so for that we're going to add a backslash in front of it. Okay, because that's how you explain it to JavaScript. Also, in this case, if you don't add this backslash in front of this backslash, then what JavaScript would think that this is an escape character, these two portion, it will skip it. Okay, and it will think that this string is not complete because this particular part is a part of the string and not the ending of the string. Alright, so I hope this is acceptable to you. And then these strings have a length property which you added after by this dot notation. You just add dot and type length, and it throws whatever the length of the complete string which you have, how many characters you have. And you can also access particular individual characters by using these square brackets by the end of it. Okay, these square brackets. And as I told you that JavaScript is 0 indexed, so we start off with 0 and it goes up to 4. Okay, so it's 0 and it throws h. If you type 4, it throws y. Okay, then comments. Comments are another important aspect of any language, because sometimes you need comments to explain your code to other people on your website, coming and looking what you have written in your JavaScript or in your HTML, CSS, or in any other programming language also. And another use for it is use for debugging. You sometimes turn off a particular section, a particular code section of your complete file, and you put that portion into a comment so it doesn't work anymore. Okay, so we're going to use Visual Studio Code for this, and or any other code editor you can use, and check on the internet what the shortcut is. But for Visual Editor, the shortcut is Alt plus Shift plus A. If you select a particular portion and press these keys, Alt, Shift and A, it will put those particular section or those particular lines into a comment, right? And there are two ways in which you start off your comments. 2 forward slashes explains JavaScript that okay, this particular line, whatever is next to it is a comment, and whatever it's enclosing in these two characters is another type of a comment. Okay, then now we finally come here to see what those new data types mean, null and undefined. Well, there goes the basic thing. When a variable is defined and isn't assigned yet, it's undefined. Okay, if you've defined something and it doesn't have a value, you don't give it a value, then it's undefined. Okay, but if you want to give it a value that just simply means nothing or empty, that's null. If I say var a equals null, then means that a does have something. It's not undefined, it's defined, but it's defined as a null value. It's just empty. Okay, and null doesn't mean 0. 0 itself is a value that it's less than 1, or 1 is or greater than -1, but null is just empty value. Okay, even 0 as a string itself is a value. Boolean 0 is a value, it says false. Okay, but null is just nothing. And it's different, it's obviously different than undefined, as a variable will now be having a value, it's just going to be empty. Okay, yes, so finally we are here to introduce you the Google developer tools that Google has given in its interface, and let me just introduce it to you. Okay, so Chrome, go for it. So after opening your home page for Chrome, you just have to type the shortcut Control Shift and I, and it will open your developer tools. Okay, inside you can see these tabs. These tabs are the elements. This is the HTML file of what Google uses. Then there's this console which we are going to use, and then there's this sources portion in which you can see what files are needed or what files the server is using to produce this web page right here. Okay, these are those advanced tabs which you won't want to see right now. So let's just get back to what Google console is. So as you can see, when I hover above these particular portions, the divs or the tags separate these boxes, it shows me Google highlights it on the web page, and it shows that this particular section contains this portion. And if you want to go in particular, like if you want to toggle that scene, that if you want to hover over this particular portion and see that in here, then there's this shortcut Control Shift and C. I'm going to click that, and you can see that this particular section is activated here. Okay, so this is for select an element in the page to inspect it. Alright, so here you're selecting an element to inspect it, and as you can see, while I hover different elements, it shows up different divs or different images or elements in my elements portion. Okay, so there's this thing. Now inside the developer tool section, if you press escape key, it will toggle the presence of console. Okay, so if you want your console to be here or to go off, you can just press the escape key. These are just some little bit shortcuts that I'm explaining it to you. And there is this tab which allows you to toggle your view. How do you want to see? Well, I prefer this particular site, so I'm going to stick to that. And now we're ahead for our console. So there are a lot of warnings or errors you might not want to see, so I'm just going to press Ctrl and L to clear it all off. It goes with here too. Okay, the clear console button, and you can also type clear. This clear method clears the console, but it throws an undefined return keyword, so I'm just going to do that with Ctrl and L. Okay, so I hope that we are good to go with this console thing. And yeah, before starting it off, I'm just going to show you that how does this works. Like if I say var happy equals 1, then it throws this value undefined. Okay, but after clicking enter, it just straight away gives me undefined. What if I want to go to down this line but not to execute it, like something like this? Alright, I want to say happy, then throws 1. It doesn't matter how much lines you take, but how did I do that? Well, you press shift and enter to go to the next line. Press shift, hold it, and then press enter to move to the next line. Okay, well, you know what, I'm just going to show you these common methods which we were going to see after this right here while we have this console opened up. So I'm just going to type alert 𝗕𝘀𝗶𝗰𝗀, and when I execute this line, the page shows a pop-up which says Avada Kedavra. There's another line which I'd like to add, console.log lumos. Well, what is this console.log? In the console, when we execute it, it shows up lumos. Okay, so it's for developing or debugging purposes, and we normally use this for practicing, or you might see some other uses of this later, but for now let's just add console.log to some common methods. And you just need to know what does it do. Okay, it just prints this statement in the console. It doesn't return it, as it returns undefined right here, but it just types lumos. Okay, it doesn't return anything, but it's a method, it's a function. Okay, next is I'm going to show you var h equals prompt, and in the prompt we're going to type a question. Let's say, how many numbers are there? okay, if I execute it, a pop-up appears which asks me for an input. Okay, so by using this prompt, you're going to actually ask the user for an input. Okay, and in this input box I'm just going to type like 4, execute it, and then it returns. Now if I define this as var h equals to prompt, then whatever the answer the user is going to type, prompt is going to save that answer in h. So if I type h now, it says me 4, which is a string value, and you need to remember that whether I type true, false, 4, whether it's a number or a string, it's always going to store this value in the form of a string. Okay, now let's get back to where we were. Yeah, so these common methods which I told you is alert, console.log, controller, and prompt. I told you all of it, so let's just get past to it. Now the comparison operators. So these are the, let me count, 3. These are 8 comparison operators, and the above 6, I guess, are very much similar to all the other programming languages. It's just this particular operator which is something new to you. So what are they? This is greater than or equal to, less than or equal to. This is used for comparison between two variables or two statements, and this also checks for whether the two statements on the left hand side or the right hand side of this key is equal or not. And let's just now give these two a comparison. Okay, when you use, let's take x as 5. Okay, and if x double equal to 5, you put a conditional statement to it. You say that check that if x is equal to 5, it says true. Well, there's an observation you can make right here, that we define x as 5, the number data type, and here x equals to 5 is a string. Okay, it's not a number, but it says true. So that means that JavaScript is converting to a mediocre stage at somewhere, and it then compares both the values. Okay, so while using double equal to, the data type of a particular variable doesn't mean anything. Okay, but if you're going to use triple equal to, then it's going to say false, because now we're comparing the data type also. Okay, and if you say not equal to, well, this particular exclamation is for not, then it's gonna be the same way as the double equal to did. It doesn't compare the data type. But if you use a double equal and then preceding that there is this exclamation mark for not, then it compares the data type. Okay, so if you add this, then it sees, okay, this might be equal, but it's not the equal data type. Okay, then it says, yeah, true, because we have this statement as 5 as a number compared to 5 as a string, and we are saying that this is not exactly the same data type or the value, then it says true. Okay, so this is a bit of a weird thing. Well, there is this keyword nan, which stands for not a number, and when you compare this with a double equal to, it says false. Well, that thing is for obvious with null and undefined. With if you type null equals to undefined, then it says true. Well, and with triple equal to, it says false. Well, that was obvious, because with double equal to, it's just empty values comparing on both the left and right hand side, and it wasn't comparing the data type. But with triple equal to, it was comparing the data type, so the values, the conclusion is clarified. But with nan, this is a bit weird, and you might never need this, but I would just like to add, just keep that in mind, that this is something wrong with not a number file. So now that we are ready with our logical operators concept, let's just give it a try of what will happen if we try to evaluate this particular expression, and take your time, pause the screen. If you don't know about this element or this element, these are or and symbols, and you can do a bit of research about them. What does it do in Boolean conditions? And this particular exclamatory mark is obviously the not symbol. Okay, so you can pause the screen, give it a try, and then afterwards I'll solve it myself. Okay, so I hope you did it all along. And now the time for the answer. Okay, so starting off with this condition right here, we have x as 3, which is a number, but it's compared to a string value of 3, but with a double equal to sign. That just means that this condition is going to be true. Okay, then after that, this condition is going to be false, because even if the data type are equal, the values are not, and so of course this value is going to be false. Okay, then these true and false conditions lie in between them. It lies an or symbol. That means totally it going to give me a true value, and if we precede a not in front of this true, then it's going to give us false. Okay, and now that we have this and condition in between this and this expression, we obviously know that if this condition is false, if just either of the two conditions is false, it's going to give me a false value. So the answer, in my opinion, is going to be false. Let's just check it. Yep, it's false. Obviously. And yeah, this is weird. You know, because if hello world is there and we add a not symbol in front of it, it gives us false. Well, this can be interpreted as this hello world right here is a true value, because then only if you take a not of a true value, it gives us false. Okay, and an empty string value is false, so if you take the not of it, it gives us true. Well, null's complement is also true, so that means null is also false. -1's complement is false. Well, that means -1 is also a true value in JavaScript. Okay, so that might be useful sometimes to know what values are true or false, because on the basis of these Boolean conditions only, you're going to make your if and else statements, and that is going to be some conditions on your loops or anywhere you get into. Okay, so those things might be useful. But the weird thing is with this thing. If you define or you declare A as hello world and then compare it with true, it gives false. We're not comparing the data type in here, we just want to compare whether this can be considered true or not, and it gives you false. Well, this is something weird I found about JavaScript, and I don't know what this is, honestly, but you just keep in mind that this happens here. Okay, so to eradicate this, I just list down all the falsy values that can be useful: false, 0, empty string, null, undefined, and nan. All these computes to false. And this A here is also, well, it doesn't compare to true itself. But yeah, there's this factor which I showed you, this condition here, it will definitely give you false. Okay, so moving ahead. Okay, so now that we're done with our logical operators and introduction to data types and all, let's move ahead to loops. Okay, so what are these loops? Well, for beginners, loops are a piece of code which allows you to run a particular section of your code as many number of times as you want. Okay, so that you don't have to repeat, or if you want to iterate, then it helps you in that case. Okay, so in this case, I'm printing out all the numbers divisible by 5 and 3, and I'm using this if condition which allows me to evaluate over some expression, and then I'm using console.log. Okay, so it checks whether a particular number which I'm using as counter, okay, it checks that if this particular number is divisible by 5 and 3 or not, and if it does, then it prints that number as it prints here, 15, 30, 45. Okay, well, this 51 is not a part of this console.log statement because console.log never returns it, and 51 is returned. Well, what is the 51? It's the counter value that was increasing, it was incrementing by 1, and while loop returns this value 51 as that by the end of the loop. It returns the counter value when it solves it completely. Okay, so the syntax goes like this: you type the keyword while, and after that in these parentheses you type the terminating condition. In those curly braces you type your code which you want to run as many number of times as your terminating condition suggests, and in this case I typed this particular section. Okay, so this if I interrupt you in between, this returned keyword 51 is not in the case of a for loop, which we are going to see just now. Okay, so it isn't clear in the screenshot, but it returns undefined right here. It doesn't give us 51 as we had. Okay, so in the for loop the syntax goes like this: you type the keyword for, and in these curly braces there goes 3 statements, which are the declaration of the variable, the terminating condition of course, and the incrementation. And apart from it, you can have this declaration and the incrementation part anywhere else also, apart from these, in between these 2 brackets, but the condition in the terminating condition has to be between these semicolons and inside these parentheses. Okay, so the same condition if we have here console.log, and then it prints 15, 30 and 45 as we expected, but it doesn't return 51 here. Okay, yeah, so the differences I got you covered back there. And there is this another loop which is the do while loop. Okay, so it, in contrast to the while loop, what it does is, let's just take it with an example. If I have this particular case, then it doesn't even enter the loop, because if we check that the variable that we have defined is 5 and the condition is I is less than 0, so 5 is not less than 0. So at first, when it sees that okay, I is not eligible for this condition, it doesn't even enters the loop and it returns undefined. Okay, but in comparison to it, in contrast to it, if we see do while loop, then do suggests that whatever has to be written in this particular section, just do it without checking what the condition is ahead of it. Okay, and when it does that particular part, like if we see I is equal to 5 and then we subtract it by 1, it says 4 because we console.log that, and then it checks the condition and then it ends, because now it won't further enter the loop again and again. Okay, so now it suggests me undefined. Well, now we come to the part of functions. Okay, so functions are, well, I should better give you an idea by typing functions right here in our Chrome Web Developer Tools, and after this I'll write function, let's say Potter, and in this I'm going to console.log whatever the argument which we were going to pass. Okay, so there goes the argument, and we want to return something, so let's say we return 5. Okay, really doesn't matter. Okay, yeah, so now the pointer is defined. While using functions, there is one more thing that I wanted to add, and that is if you type just potter, it will give you the definition of the function. But if you define potter with parentheses, it will try to execute it. Okay, and as you can see, we didn't give a parameter to it, we didn't give the argument to this, so it didn't know what to console.log, so it did undefined and it returned the 5 keyword right here. Okay, so let's just try to add an argument, which is obviously a string which says Harry. Okay, so now it returned 5 and it console.logged Harry 2. Okay, so that's how the function works. But I would like to add one more thing, and yes, this thing that I realized that I didn't explain it to you. If you go pressing the up key and the down key in the Google console, then it shows you the previously executed codes. Okay, so I'm just going to go up, and in this function definition I'm just going to swap these two lines. Okay, and now I'm going to show you what will happen. So if now I say potter Harry, yes, so it didn't give me this Harry which I had before. Well, why is that? Because we added the return keyword before the console.log. Whenever the return key is executed in a particular function, then it ignores whatever is left behind this return keyword. Okay, so it just skips this and it returns this 5 straight away, and it won't check even if you write 100 lines of code ahead this, it won't give a damn about it, and it will just give you 5 in return of it. Okay, so return keys and argument is compared. Well, I explained it all to you, so if you want to see this example, you can pause the screen and check it out. If you have any doubts, you can go down and comment it. We are ready to help you. And now we are off to arrays. Well, arrays, like any other language, is 0 indexed. Okay, unless you're dealing with R or Octave or something. Okay, so now that we've seen that array are 0 indexed, if you want to create an array, you just type this var Gryffindor equals to square braces, and in those you type these keywords of whatever string or number you want, anything. But if you want to create a separate an empty array, you just type this empty square brackets, or you just say new array. You use the new keyword to assign or to declare a new array. Okay, and for indexing you use the square brackets in front of the array to check it out. Like if I say Gryffindor of 0, it says Harry, and Gryffindor of 2 suggests Ron, Gryffindor of 1 suggests Hermione. So if I type this console.log it, then it says Harry, Ron and Hermione are best friends. Okay, so these are some methods which are typically defined for arrays. Okay, and these methods sometimes get useful for deleting and adding stuff into the arrays, and we'll see to it one by one how it's done. So namely, those are push and pop, shift and shift, index of, slice and splice, and I'll drop this link in the description, of course, and let's see to it one by one. Okay, so push and pop. Whenever you want to add or delete something by the end of the string, by the end of the array, you use push or pop. Push adds something to the end of the string, and pop, it just pops out whatever is the end of this is at the end of the string. Okay, so while using push, you give whatever you want to add within those brackets. Like for example, if we add Magnus to it, and then after executing this particular section, it gives back the total length of whatever the array is currently having. Okay, And as you can see, if we execute Doug, then we can see Magnus at the end of the string. And if you feel like but it's just fine without him and you want to remove Magnus from behind, you can use pop. Okay, it pops out and it returns whatever it just popped out. Alright, and in this case it was Magnus. So our dark array is just back to Jonas, Martha and Bartosz. Shift and unshift. Well, as push and pop worked for the end of the array, shift and unshift works for the beginning of the array. Okay, so in this case, Michael, Jonas and Hannah is an array of named by the dark, and if you feel like you need to remove Michael, you use shift. Okay, so shift will remove Michael and your array will just remains with Hannah, Jonas and Hannah. Okay, then unshift gets back anything at the beginning of the array. So if you add Mikkel to the unshift method, it will return you whatever the current length of the array is going on, and it will add Mikkel to the beginning of the array. Okay, index of, well, it just provides us the index of whatever value that we are searching for. For example, dot index of will give us 2 because Hannah is at the index 0, 1 and 2. Alright. Well, slice is used to take out a particular section of an array. Okay, so if we were to zoom it a little bit, yeah, that would do. Okay, so just think that if you want to take out Katharina and Hannah in a separate array, you can use slice for it. So just add winden.slice, and in the argument section, in the first parameter, you give 1 as the starting of this array, as we have to take Katharina first, so 0, 1. And in the second parameter, you give 3. Well, you may think that shouldn't it be 2 here? Well, other programmers, you guys know that this is the convention that we have in other languages also, like C++, Java, or Python, that it ignores, it takes this number here and it decreases it by 1 and then execute it. Okay, so you can take it like this, that this is the number of terms that we are ahead of from the starting, like 1, 2, 3, and then we're taking Hannah in it. Okay, and it does not alter the original Winden array. It just takes this piece and it assigns this sliced part into the noise array. Okay, and Winden contains this obvious terms, and now noise contains Katharina and Hannah, as you can see here. And you can also use slice to copy an entire array as numbers. If you take as 1, 2, 3 and other nums is equal to nums.slice and you don't specify anything, that means you're completely copying an array to the other. Okay, so splice, well, splice is kind of like slice, but what it does, it removes a particular term from in between the array. Like for example, in here, if you see that we had Katharina and we wanted to be removed from the array, so we just specify the index to be removed, the starting index to be removed, and how many terms has to be removed from that afterwards. Okay, so winden.splice, and inside we give 1, 1. That means starting from Katharina, we just want to remove one term, so that returns Katharina. And now that we console.logged it, we don't see this return keyword, but it just print Ulrich, Hannah, Charlotte and Peter, and now you can see that Katharina is already out of it. Iterating in an array, well, for iterating you can also use for loop or a while loop, and apart from that there is this for each. Okay, so it's defined specially for the arrays. And what does it do? Let me just give you a zoomed view of it. We have an array which says Potter equals to James, Lily, Harry and Ginny, and inside the Potter we have these 4 keywords, and ahead of it we add for each to it, and it requires a callback function inside it. Okay, so whatever in okay, let me just go back and show you whatever is inside this particular bracket is a callback function which is executed when for each is called. Okay, so this function will, you can name it, of course. Here you can name it here, but it wasn't necessary, so I didn't. So in here the argument is Hogwarts, and you might notice that Hogwarts doesn't really involve in whole of the process. It's just a placeholder. You can call whatever you want. Just it just takes whatever the values goes in for Potter, and for each of these values it plays Hogwarts in it, and it console.logs it. Okay, so it, as it suggests, James, Lily, Harry, and Ginny. Okay, now that we're done with arrays, there is this separate structure called objects, and it's very much like CSS. It has key value pairs, and in Python, if you know about that, it's called dictionary, because it has a key and then it has some values assigned to it. And for retrieval of values, if you want to take values out of a particular object, you can use the bracket notation like Jonas bracket and specify the key of whatever it was, and the dot notation. Okay, so Jonas dot city would also work. But if you want to assign new values, new properties, you can assign like this, the square bracket and the dot notation. But there's just one thing you need to keep in mind, that with dot notation, numbers cannot be in the first place. Okay, so if you say Jonas in bracket there's one love equals Martha, then it would work. But if you were to take dot notation and add one hate equals Adam, then it won't work. Okay, apart from that, if you want to go without any number in the front part of your key, then it would work. Like if we see Jonas dot hate equals Adam, okay, that works. And now that you can see Jonas as an object, it has these many number of values: name, his age, city, one love, and hate. Okay, and its prototype is object. For creating the new objects, you can write var my object as an empty object with curly braces, or you can go with the new keyword. So objects can obviously hold any type of a data, and it can also hold another type of an object. It's just you need to specify the key and with the colon symbol, and after that your value, whatever the key is going to hold. So in this case, another object holds this value, the object as it. And for that matter, if I want to tell you, arrays can also hold any type of an any type of that structure inside them, and even arrays can also hold objects inside them as a part of an array. Okay, and you can also have different methods assigned to your objects, and this is the basics of the object-oriented programming, problem solving of the JavaScript, that you can use methods to the assigned to the objects. Like if I have math equals function, let me just get back, I'm sorry about that. If I have math as the key, and in the value portion I have function x comma y, and I tell it to return x plus y, then I have to assign it, I have to use dot notation to retrieve the value, as we did before. That goes with the methods also, and with that we have to specify 10, 20, which is 30. Okay, so math 10, 20 will not give you anything, but the chosen one dot math 10, 20 will give you 30. Okay, because that was the name of the object that we were using. And well, you might also want to think that what is the need of assigning methods to objects? Well, it keeps your works organized, obviously, because you now have a separate method for a particular object that you're going to use, and also it is a solution for the namespace collision. Well, what is the namespace collision? If you were to have one particular method, like for example delete, and if we talk about Instagram, if you have if you talk about post and delete at the same time, and then comments and delete at the same time, that particular code is not the same for all the deletes. Okay, in that case we have post, comment, and messages in different objects, and we have the same keyword delete as the method for it. Okay, so we don't assign separate methods for everything. We just have this delete keyword, which is really organized to use, and we have that with all the other objects that we're going to use, as I said, post or comments or messages or anything. This keyword, well, this particular keyword is really important in JavaScript, and it's the most quirkier part of the JavaScript. Even experts gets confused with this keyword many number of times, and it's useful in many cases, and this just need a lot of practice to master. Okay, so this is so complicated just because of the fact that this refers to different things when used in different contexts. Okay, and the basics, if I talk about, is in JavaScript, every time a function is run, it has two keywords assigned to that function. One is the arguments and other is this, and there are four ways to define what keyword this refers to, and in this tutorial we're just going to look at global and object or implicit binding, and in the next one we'll see to the explicit or the new keyword. Okay, so what is the global? When you see this keyword outside of a declared object, that refers to the window object. Okay, the window object is called the object that we are working on, and it's also called the global object. And in this context, you'll further add a separate environment of your code to add a separate context, which we'll see in a little bit advanced portion of JavaScript. But for now, if I want to talk about what do I mean by declared object, that means that we do not have an object defined which contains a function which uses the keyword this. Well, this line is important, as you will see afterwards, and I'm going to repeat this as, what do I mean by a declared object? If I talk about this keyword, that we do not have an object defined which contains a function which uses the keyword this. Okay, so that line suggests that inside an object there should be a function which uses the this keyword. Okay, that line was important. This keyword still refers to the window object because we don't have this function inside a declared object. As I said before, this function right here in the screenshot is function determined this, and in that I returned this. Okay, so if I return this, it still goes with window, although I used a function for it. But as we don't have a separate object declared for it, it throws me window. Even if I had an object, a separate object without a function which contains this, and inside the object I just had this keyword assigned to it, it was going to throw me the window object only. Okay, and if we are going to see how we can assign values with this, so here's this example which says function determine this, as we use this dot person equals me. So this means here the window object, so this actually evaluates to window dot person equals me, and in the window object it adds person as a key and me as the value in the object. Okay, so we are going to return this dot person and it returns me. Okay, now implicit and object binding. We are here seeing an example of an object which I declared. This is person. In it, the first name is 𝗕𝘀𝗰, and 𝗕run is a method which returns this dot first name plus run. Then there's a separate method called 𝗕𝘀𝗰𝗀 which returns a Boolean value, that is this ==2%. Okay, so in this case, what I'm about to do is I'm about to declare a separate object inside this object. Inside the person, I'm declaring to me an object, and in that I'm going to define two separate methods similar to those, and I'm going to check what context is there when I use this keyword. So what will happen is, if we talk about this particular context, this keyword refers to the person. Okay, it does not refers to the window object, because now we are having this object, and inside this object we are using a function which uses the keyword this. Okay, so now this ==2% will become true. Okay, it will not be the same as before, it will not be the window object. Okay, and similarly in this particular portion, this refers to person, and now that we exchange this keyword with person, it evaluates to person.firstname plus run. So that will do 𝗕𝘀𝗰 plus run. Okay, this particular string will be returned. But if we are to say to me, say hello function, this whole function defined, and it says hello plus this dot first name, what will happen? Do you think that this refers still to the person? No, it's not. It actually refers to me, because now it's inside an object which has a function which uses the keyword this. So this now refers to me, and to me dot first name will be evaluated. But as we don't have the first name keyword assigned to me, that will just throw undefined. Like if I say person dot to me dot say hello, as I said here, person dot to me dot say hello, it will give hello undefined, because this dot first name is not defined in this context. Okay, and in this case, determine context will give me false. Okay, so person dot to me dot determine context, it will give me false. This is the implicit or object binding, which suggests when the keyword this is found inside a declared object which uses a function which has the keyword this, it refers to the closest parent object, as it did in this case when we were to define person, and as it did in this case when we were to define to me. Okay, so now that we've seen a lot of JavaScript, we're finally here to have you give you the idea of the document object model. Well, this particular model helps us to do interactions with our page, to deal with HTML and CSS, and to use it in a really effective way. Okay, so yes, you finally see JS working on your page. It enables interactivity, and the basic flow of working is to select and manipulate. Okay, with this document object model, you select a particular section of your code, of your HTML or your CSS, and then after selecting it, you store it in a variable and then you manipulate it. Well, it's not necessary to store it in a variable, but it's obviously a good practice of storing that. Okay, all the information regarding HTML and CSS stays in the document object model, and we select that info and then makes it interact with JS. Okay, and it obviously stays behind the curtains because you won't be able to see it. You'll just able to see the HTML and CSS part and the JavaScript working on its space. So what exactly is this? Well, I just wrote a code to demonstrate you this particular section of toggling going on. Okay, that you can do with the document object model, and we'll see to it later. What is it? Okay, but how it's seen? What is the document object model? Well, this model right here is the interpretation of this particular code. This is a little bit of code which is just there's this HTML tag, then there's this head tag, there is this body tag, and inside the body we have h1, h2, then ul, then lists and all. And now that we've seen this, the document object model sees this particular section as this. Okay, so in the document object we have root element, then we have elements, head and body. We have in the element head we have title, and the title we have Hogwarts. Okay, in the body we have the attribute style, which is just the assistant of this whole node and not the child of it or not the sibling of it. There's just the attribute is just an assistant. And in the children we can see element h1, which is Harry Potter, h2 is list of spells, and ol is the ordered list that we're going to have. Okay, well, it was ul, so you just take that in mind. And there are separate list elements which suggest expecto patronum, 𝗕𝗃𝗦𝗰𝗍, Wingardium Leviosa. Okay, so what I wanted to show you is this particular code section converts to this document object model. Okay, and similarly goes for the CSS. How do you access the properties of this model? Well, obviously it's an object model. Okay, so as it's an object, the document object, you just add dot notation and further you type anything, any property you want. Okay, so whether it be the URL or the body. In the URL, it suggests me that this particular file is the link to your file, and with this link you can open it. And with the body, it gives me the entire body tag which I have in my HTML. Okay, now as I talked about before, selectors are these methods which allows you to select a particular piece of code used in CSS and HTML. Okay, so these particular terms which I have here as document.getElementById, getElements by class name, getElements by tag name, query selector all, these selectors allows us to extract a particular section of HTML or CSS, and then we manipulate it to add interactivity to our page. Okay, so let's just take a close look at this example. Here's this HTML file in which I wrote this is to be selected by an ID, this is to be selected by a class, and there's this lot of it. And as I show here, I added the ID as an ID, and there are two classes. Well, it's just one class, and I added this 2 times, a class and a class. And here's a list which is first element, second element, and third element. Well, we're just going to see one by one what every selector means. Okay, so we're just going to add a variable to store whatever these values are. So if I say document.getElementById, and in specific I pass in the argument section an ID, it goes and searches for the ID, and it extracts whatever is inside this ID. Okay, so in particular this is going to be a div, and if we check it out, what does ID selection means, it returns me the whole HTML tag of it. Okay, so this might be new to you, and this is pretty amazing. This is completely crazy. Yes, that we're now actually dealing with our HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. Okay, so class selection equals to document.getElements by class name, and in the argument section we have provided a class. So it goes on and it selects all those classes which we had with the tag class equals to a class. Okay, so if you were to return class selection, it returns an HTML collection of it. Okay, so it's an array like object, and inside it has our 2 sections, 2 divs which we had as a class and a class. Okay, but what if you want to select just one of it? So as I said, it's an array like object. We can use this square bracket notation, and in particular, we can use the zero indexed scheme to extract the first and the second part of this div. So if I assign class selection 1 to this particular code, class selection 1 gives me the first class. This is to be selected by a class. And class selection 2 in the similar way gives me classes can be selected more than once. Okay, so tag selection. Well, sometimes you don't need to assign IDs or class every time. Okay, there is just this tag selection which allows you to extract elements by their tag name. So if I say get elements by tag name and inside it I say li, then it searches for all those terms which has li as the tag name and it puts it in the tag selection. So if I say tag selection, it gives me HTML collection of length 3 and inside it I have 3 li's. Okay, and in the similar way we can extract first, second or the third value by giving the bracket notation 1, 2 or 3. Okay, and now this is the query selection part, in which the query selector acts a bit different from all the others. In all the other keywords, we were to add this string value of whatever ID, class or tag we were using, but now query selector is a universal selector which can act for all these three of it. So for selecting an ID, you just need to give the CSS selector scheme inside it. Okay, so as you can see here, it's hash and ID. So it suggests JavaScript that okay, this particular key is an ID, and then this query selector searches for an ID which has the name an ID. Okay, so it gets here, and query for ID gives us the same thing as it were for ID selection. Okay, query for class, it gives this dot a class. We have to give this as the argument, and with that we have query for class. This is to be selected by a class. This is the first selection that we're going to make. Okay, so as the work done by get elements by class name did, it selected all the classes, all the divs which had the class a class. Okay, query selector did just the first one of it because it doesn't have that functionality. To eradicate this problem, we have query selector all, which selected all of those elements which we have. Okay, so if I pass the tag name query selector all and in that I give li, that will take all the tags which has the li and it stores in query selector for all tags. It suggests node list 3 li, and li, because query selector does that same function in the form of node lists as get elements did in HTML collection. Okay, so if we were to select ID, we give the hashtag. If we were to select class, we give a dot. If we were to select a tag, we don't specify anything. It doesn't have that HTML keys of greater than or less than assigned to it. It just doesn't have that. And query selection 2, inside it I specified that you can use selectors of CSS as a typical term in it. Like the space selector suggests that li in whatever the li is in the UL portion, that is to be selected. For example, if I had a separate unordered list apart from this list, okay, so if we were to select query selector, then we didn't know which UL is going to be selected or which li is going to be selected. But in this case, inside of the UL we have this li, and we specified with this CSS selector nth of type 2 that we just want to take the second element of it. Okay, so query selection 2 gives me the second element, okay, as the query selector 1 was giving me the first. So the point that I'm going to make is you can have inside the query selector any type of selector you were using in CSS. Okay, that was the basic concept of it. Now we're talking about manipulating the selections. We've made a lot of selections. We've seen how the selections are made, okay, how selectors are used, and now we're about to manipulate the elements, style, content, and inside of it we can add or remove a presence of a class, or we can just toggle the presence of it. And inside the content we can change the content of element, we can even change the attributes of it. Okay, these manipulations can be made active from the very beginning when the page loads, on click when you particularly click a particular button, then it goes on hover when you hover a particular section, then a drop box appears, something like that, and many more events to it. And these all of these events, you can have a look at it in the MDN reference. Okay, so let's first talk about style of the event. Okay, this is the syntax which goes for style, which goes for manipulating the style of the event. Okay, so if I say id selection dot style dot color equals purple, it changes the color from black to purple of this selected div. Okay, so what did I do? I assigned the variable with the dot notation. I added style, which suggested JavaScript or the DOM model that now this person is talking about the CSS. And with the CSS selected of this ID selection, in the div that we've selected, we've specified the color to be purple. Okay, so now we have this particular section which was in black color. Now we have this as purple. And with the dot notation you can have as many properties assigned to it in JavaScript as it were in CSS. It's just the difference that in CSS we were to write a hyphen in between the properties, and now we are using the camel case scheme. Okay, yes, separation of concerns. I think I've talked about it in the beginning of this, that you want to there's this good habit of programming when you want to make a separate file for it. Okay, so separation of concern in MDN reference, they've told that the style global attribute contains CSS styling declaration to be applied to the element. This is recommended because first off, you're not considering this file as a separate file in your apart from your HTML, and the second thing is you're being repetitive. You're doing just the same thing, id selection dot style and id selection dot style again and again. This is not a good habit of programming, because what if you wanted to go for 1,000 properties? Would you write the same code 1,000 number of times? That's just not a point to be made. Okay, so there is this solution for both of the problems. Okay, in the CSS file we're going to add first class named class, and in that class we're going to specify all the properties that we are to make in the selected div, and after selecting it we're going to add this inside our id selection. Okay, so id selection dot class list suggests whatever the class list we have, and inside it there is this method add to add this first class. Okay, and this remove method suggests to remove this particular class from the selected ID. Well, this doesn't make sense right now, but after you go into the interactions you might want to use these three terms again and again. And toggle is also a really useful method to it, because if this first class is present inside that div, it toggles the presence of it. Okay, so well, let me just introduce you to it. Just hit yes, and this is the file. Okay, and if I go up clicking the console, just expand it, and now if I type id selection dot text content, it will give me this ID to be selected. This is to be selected by the ID, and if I type ID selection dot inner text, this gives me the same thing with just one change, and this change is this space character which you have it. Okay, so text content is anything that I define inside my HTML, but inner text works in real time and it extracts this particular web page's text content which it has in it. You'll get it better if I just showed you my Google page, which has right here. Let's just do this separate console part, and inside it, let's type document.body.text content. Okay, so there's this funny text content that you can see, and it doesn't end here at all. It will say show you more 68.78 KB, so it's a lot of scripting done in here. This is the text content. It's defined in the JavaScript or in HTML. As you can see, there are comments in this. Okay, so I'll just clear it off and I'll say the same thing. It's just now I'm specifying the inner text. Okay, so this is the inner text. Before it was the text content which was showing anything that we typed in our files, but the inner text works in real time. It extracts it right from the page, the Gmail, images, then search Google or type a URL portion or the customize. Okay, so I'm just going to clear it off. And the inner HTML, well, it was left. Okay, well, let's start by ID selection only. ID selection dot inner text, not inner text, inner HTML, and I'm just going to manipulate it right now here itself. So let's just copy this particular down. Okay, and by an ID, well, what if I wanted to bold this particular term? Let's try bolding it by using this. Okay, and put this in inverted commas. Okay, and now that we see that ID is bolded, so inner HTML can alter the tags in which you have your selection. Okay, all the tags in the selection that you have, it can be altered with the inner HTML, and it can be selected by inner HTML, right? So this thing that I wanted to show you. Now let's get back to where we were. I hope these three terms are clear to you now: text content, inner text, inner HTML. And now that we are done with all of this, let's see how we can change the attributes. Okay, so different HTML tags have different attributes. Like they have image tag has src attribute, or we can have an href attribute inside an a tag and anchor tag. Okay, so get attribute is a method which returns the attribute, the value of the attribute. Like if, for example, if I type href inside the tag name, it gives back to me the URL that which the href is to be it was pointing. Okay, and set attribute changes the attribute value. Okay, so tag name, like for example, if I selected an anchor tag and tag name I gave href and the value I given a particular URL, after executing this particular line, that anchor tag redirects to the new value which we just gave. Okay, so there's this note that you cannot simply add similar features to all the elements of a node. Okay, so if I select, like for example, in the Google page, if I select links in the Google page by selecting with the A tag. Okay, if I use the selector get elements by tag name and I select all the anchor tags of the page with this A anchor tag, then I have the HTML collection of links in which contains all the anchor tags of it. Okay, but you can see that this is an HTML collection. It's not something that we can directly use this and links in dot style. We cannot use that because it's the collection. It's not typically a particular selection. Okay, it's a collection. So for that we have to go one by one, declaring it 2 pixel solid yellow border or background being yellow or the color of the font being black. We have to go one by one and we have to use a for loop for that. And you can also not use a for each because it's an HTML collection. It's like an object like array. Okay, so it's not typically an array. So to apply for each, we need to first convert this HTML collection to an array and then we can use it. And that part we'll see in advanced JavaScript, that how do we do that for doing this object like array into a specific array. Okay, events. This part tells JavaScript to do something when the user does a particular thing. Like for example, if I make a click on it, or if I hover my mouse pointer to something, if I click the arrow keys, then it adds event to show up the interactivity. Okay, like with this add event listener function, I tell JavaScript to listen for my activity. Okay, listen for a click, listen for a hover, or anything like that. So in the type portion, you're just going to specify click or hover or anything like that, and this is the callback function, and this is what it does when you click on it or when you hover it. This particular function runs when a particular event is listened, heard by JavaScript. And element is obviously a selection. Now that we deal with everything comprised the JavaScript, like from the beginning, the data types, and then arrays, objects, then this keyword, and then we saw the DOM, the document object model, in which we selected and manipulated, and then we had a look to the events. We're now up to this project on which we are going to make. This is a calculator. Its HTML and CSS are already prepared. I'll drop a drive link in the description, and the JavaScript file is we are going to make right now, right here. Okay, so I'm just going to open calc.html and open file location, and here in this I'm just going to open it with Visual Studio Code, as well as I'm going to open this with the Chrome browser. Well, now that we are here, let's open the JS file also, which are completely the comments, and let's open the CSS file also, which has so CSS file had all the styling, and the JS file has completely been written in the comment style, and now we're going to add proper JavaScript code in it so that we can have interactivity in our calculator. Okay, so before starting off, I'm going to show you how I've prepared this calculator. So I'm just going to go to this, and I'm going to open it in the Chrome browser. So I'm just going to open the developer section, those developer tools, and I'm just going to show you what things I did. The element's name, what did I do in it? So there is this body of the calculator in which we have the operator, a section called central, and we have a screen to display. Okay, we have this operators class, one here and one here. Okay, this is another operators class. We have plus, minus, multiply, divide, and in the central panel we have operators up here which are control, clear and delete, and 3 rows of numbers which are 7, 8, 9, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, etc. And we also have a decimal, an equal to operation of course, and a percentage symbol. Well, one thing which is quite notable in this is the spans in which I contained these numbers and IDs. I named those IDs as the key itself. Okay, so if I have the value of the button as percentage, I named that span as percent, the ID as percent. This is equals, this is dot, 1, 2 and 3, and the same scheme goes on. Okay, so this is the main thing that I wanted to show, and afterwards we're going to make selections of it and we're going to add interactivity. So let's just see how to do that. Okay, so now we're in our Visual Studio Code. Well, first off, we're going to make selections, as I said. So I'm just going to declare a keyword first row, and this is going to be document dot query selector all, because we want to select all of those numbers, and in inverted commas we're going to give central. Inside those central I have div, and it's going to be the second div, so nth of type, it's going to be second, and we're collecting all of those spans. Okay, the same scheme goes on for copy, and the same scheme goes on for 4, 5, 6 and 1, 2, 3. It's just the difference that now we're having the first row as the second row in the camel case, and nth of type is going to be 3. Okay, so this particular code I'm going to paste it in here, and again there's just one difference, that this is going to be 4. So now we've selected all those rows into first row, second row, and I'm going to name this the third row. Okay, so now that we selected, now we are going to make a particular array which contains all the numbers. Okay, like for example I say arrays equals to bracket notation, and in that I'm going to push all those elements, numbers dot push, say first row, second row, and the third row. Okay, now we're going to select plus and minus. So for that I'm going to name it, let's say first, second column equals document dot query selector. Well, you can name anything you would like, but I don't know why I just kept that name. Let's just go with that. So dot operators, because it's in the class dot operators, and inside that class we had the div which we were going to be selecting. Okay, and now we are using to select clear and upper, so let's say it's central upper, it's document dot query selector all. Okay, and in that, well, as I showed you, I had C and del in the operator's ID. So I'm going to write operator's ID, and inside that I'm going to select all the spans. Okay, then this particular thing is also applied to dot equals to and percentage. We're going to write var central bottom. Okay, and this is document dot query selector all, and it is central. Central, it's the ID, the central ID. Okay, central ID. Inside it was the div, and nth of type well, I'm just going to copy this because it's going to be the same thing inside the calculator. It's just the fifth row that now we're going to make the use of. Okay, so as I told you, the escape character thing that was going on there. So it's the fifth column that we're going to select now, and I'm just going to add some spaces because it's now getting a little bit clumsy around here. And now that we selected all the operators, we're going to push all the operators into one. Okay, so I'm going to make operators as a separate array, and now I'm going to push all the operators into one. Second column, central upper, and central bottom. Okay, now we've added all those objects that we selected into our operators column. Okay, now we have to declare an empty string to hold the result, and then we have to evaluate it. Okay, so it's just a result empty string. We're going to use it to evaluate and to concatenate our result to this empty string. Okay, and the screen which we had, now we're going to select that to make manipulations to it. Whenever someone clicks a button, it should go up over the screen. So we're going to type document dot query selector, and inside it I'm going to type screen because this was the particular name of that file. And now we're going to make a function which will make things display on the screen. Okay, so whenever a user clicks, this function gets to work. Let's say print to screen, and let's say anything which goes in. Okay, and we now have to add the parameter to the result and make changes to the text content of display div. Okay, so it suggests that in the empty string of ours, result plus equals to, we have to type anything because it evaluates to result equals to result plus anything. That means we are concatenating two strings. Okay, and after that I'm going to write display dot text content because we're manipulating the text content of it, and set that as result. So whatever we get this into the result, we add this into the display portion and we displays it. So apart from this, we have to iterate the numbers so that when you click it, it appears on the screen. Okay, we're now using two for loops because let me just first type it and then I'll explain it to you. Okay, so yeah, this whole code section was a bit complicated, and what are we going to do in this is our numbers array is an array which is two-dimensional. Okay, so it has three node lists inside of it, and we're going to iterate it one by one. So this particular loop iterates in three node lists, and this, the inner inside loop, iterates in particular one node list at a time. So when I starts with 0, this goes numbers, and it goes numbers dot length. Okay, the terminating condition is like that, and with that I being 0, the j acts for numbers 0 dot length, which is 3. It goes in till 3 and starts with 0, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so whenever the user will click on a particular button, this loop runs 9 times because we have 9 numbers in our list. Okay, so this loop is going to run 9 times, and it checks on what time does this is implemented. So for example, if at a particular time I and j values are 0 and 2, okay, so that suggests that our number is 9, because if I type in here, if I equals j and j equals 2, we have our number as number 0, 2 is equal to 9. That's because we were having as 7, 8, 9, and then 4, 5, 6, and then 1, 2, 3. Okay, so that is the thing. So at a particular time, it checks that whether this particular button is clicked, and then this keyword refers to this context of the object that we are talking about. Okay, so we are using this numbers I and j to refer to this, and then we hit the text content of that particular span, and then we use our already made function print to screen. So if I press the number 9, I and j verifies for 0 and 2. Okay, and then the print to screen function works, and we have 9 written in the place of anything, because this keyword refers to numbers 0, 2, which is 9, and 9 dot text content is 9. So result equals to result plus anything, that is the empty string plus anything, which says 9. Okay, then before moving ahead, I would like to check whether this particular thing works in the Chrome browser or not. So let's just open it, or well, let me just save this particular file and then just open it. We'll refresh it first, and zoom it a little bit, type 9. Okay, yeah, it works. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2. It works. Okay, so leave it blank for now. We refresh the page and it will draw blank. Okay, and now we add what to do for the operators part, of course, because now that we are added with numbers, let's just go for operators. So for where I equals to 0, similar condition starting off with I equals to 0, operators dot length as we did for numbers, I plus plus, for where j equals to 0, j less than operators I dot length, because now that we are in the inner loop, we want every node list to be separate, to be taken separately, and then in particular iterate through it. Operators, then the first comment says add an event listener. Okay, so we're going to add an event listener to listen to our events whenever we click it. Event listener that is click function. On clicking, it will give this a callback. Okay, and after this we are to add what will happen if C is pressed. Our motive is to clear the screen whenever the C key is pressed. So if this dot text content equals string C, okay, then in that particular case we'll set our result to be the empty string, and we're going to print to screen the empty string. Well, it's just the same thing, but I'm gonna write this for okay, because print the same thing. If we pass an empty array, it will add it to the result, and we already set the result as this, the empty string. Okay, now moving ahead, after the C key is pressed, we have to add functionality for our del key to be when it pressed. Okay, so we type if this dot text content, okay, says del, within that we type, well, we just have to set result one character back, okay, which we already had that in string. So result is to be set with result dot slice. Okay, we can use slice here because result is a string and can be treated like that. Result dot length -1. Okay, so this particular term selects whatever the result has with one term minus it at the end, and it selects all that part and assigns result to that particular part. Okay, and now we print to screen. We have to add an empty string with that. Okay, then after the delete is pressed, there is this different aspect for percent and equal and rest, plus minus, multiply, divide, and full stop. Not the full stop, of course. Well, the decimal symbol is the same because we're going to evaluate it. Okay, yeah, so one more thing, that in this del case, in spite of using this if, it's better to write else if. Okay, else if is similar to if, it's just if this particular section is implemented, it doesn't check this particular section if it's written in else if. If I were to remove this else here, this checks if this condition is true and this condition is true. It checks both of it. But now it's a part of this whole condition. If this particular part is not executed, then it goes for this, it checks for this. Okay, so that is better in its case. Now if you were to type the percentage part, you have to write else if, then this dot text content, and it is percentage result equals eval. This is a method which we use to evaluate whatever is in the result. It takes the string and it evaluates, and then it assigns it to, and then it multiplies 0.01 to convert it into the percentage format. Okay, so print to screen empty string, and we're done with percentage. Now another else if, and with this else if we're going to make the functionality of equals to, okay, this dot text content equals to, in strings we're going to write equal to the symbol, and the same way that we did before, result equals to eval result. Straight away we're going to evaluate a result and assign it to the result portion, because it will then makes it appear on our screen. And then we assign print to screen with this inverted commas, okay, else if, and then now it's else, because this is the final time in which we explain the JavaScript that is used for this particular part, plus minus multiply divide. So we write print to screen this dot id, okay. And why did I write id? Well, that is because in our HTML file, as you can see, this particular symbol I took it from Google, and this particular symbol of divide also I took it from Google. So this is undefined in cases of JavaScript. JavaScript does not know what is this product symbol or division symbol means. It just knows this. So I named the IDs of these particular divs as multiply, the asterisk symbol, and the forward slash, and similarly for plus and minus, of course. And now I'm going to use the ID name to evaluate it, okay. So whenever the key is pressed, it's going to print to the screen this dot id, which is going to be the symbol, okay, and then it's going to evaluate it, because after it all we're going to press the equal button, okay. So let's save this file and get back to Chrome browser where we had our calculator. I'm going to refresh this and let's check it out. Okay, 1265 divided by 3, press equal to, it does. Then percentage, okay, it works. Then delete, clear, it works. 45 and delete works. 4.2 minus 4 plus 3. Okay, cool, it all works. Well, congratulations, your first project on JavaScript works very well. And I'm going to close this now, as we are enough of it. I'm going to give you these files, the solution and the exercise to deal with, and I'm here happy to help. You can contact me on my phone or email, or you can drop your doubts in the comment section. I'm just going to close this and get back to the PPT that we were, okay. So apart from this, when we're all done with our JavaScript, I'm going to add something more to it, that is this switch statements and 2-3 concepts after it also. So the switch statements is also part of the basic JavaScript, but it was requiring the need of DOM to be completed, so I kept this for afterwards. So let me just open it. Yes, okay. So it's a form, it tells you to choose one out of the most. So it has 3 options, Jonas, Martha and Claudia. Let's just add Claudia and I'm going to click it. So it says you chose Claudia. Well, this particular code uses switch statements to act upon. And if we just check it out, I'm going to open the source portion. In that I have this HTML. Going to close the console, and in that let's just check what is going on. So this is the HTML that you're seeing, okay, the form tag and all. This is the main thing that we would like to talk about, the script tag, okay. So we have a function, and inside that function everything is going on. The function says dark, and that dark function, we added this function into a button with onClick event. Yes, this onClick event acts upon whenever someone clicks this particular button. Okay, so the click button has the dark function in it implemented, and whenever I click this click button, the dark function gets implemented and this particular code section runs. So every time dark runs, it declares a variable choice which has this particular value, that is whatever is selected under the name ID, the ID having the name switch, and in particular we extract whatever the value is being selected in the text field. Okay, so whatever you type in the text field, the value is to be selected and it's stored in the choice keyword. Okay, it's raining outside. Wow. Okay, so in the switch panel we see in here the code with whatever it's written. We make a choice, and then that choice, on the basis of that, we're going to make our selection. Okay, so we have some particular cases in this. If case is Jonas, like the choice whatever we made, the extracted part from here, if the text written was Jonas, then it says you choose Jonas. Okay, if it was Martha, then it says you chose Martha. And similarly in the case of Claudia, there are break statements in a switch case which refers to the continuity of the case statement. Okay, so if you don't write these break statements, and for the case when it goes for Jonas, if it were the case of this break statement not being here, then Martha's case also would have gone. Okay, so if I could just go back to my PPT and I'll show you it in a better way. We'll just switch. The name of this file is switch. Okay, so switch.html. Yep, open file location, and I'm going to open this with Visual Studio Code. Okay, so I'm going to show you what will happen if you don't add a break statement in here. And I'll save it in this way. Let's refresh it. Yeah, so it doesn't have a break statement right now. And if I add Jonas, okay, let's see the full result. Oops. Yeah, you choose Jonas, you chose Martha. It adds to both of the cases and it writes both of them. So that we don't want, that's why we add a break statement. And there's this case of default, which is if anything goes apart from these three cases, it shows default. Okay, so this switch condition is more of like if an else statement. We could also have written if choice equals to Jonas, then do this. If choice equals to Martha, then do this. But it's a separate way of doing things in a more organized way and in an effective way. So that's I wanted to show you. Apart from this, I'm just going to close this for now. I'm going to close this for now and this for now. And now that we have done the switch statements, let's just go ahead to a topic that is a little bit off of it, but it's worth a notice. So here I'm declaring a variable that's chapter and its value is SIAM. And here's this function which is call university, and the variable university is VIT. Okay, so when we enter chapter, it returns SIAM because the value of chapter was SIAM. But when we call for call university, okay, and in the next line we type university, it doesn't return the value of university, that is VIT. Why did it behave like this? Well, because in the call university, there was a separate execution context that was created when we declared it. Okay, so in that execution context, there was this variable university created whose values was VIT, right? So when this function terminated, that execution context disappeared. Okay, it popped out of the execution stack, and we'll see to it in the advanced JavaScript portion. But for now, just get this, the fact that where university was declared inside the scope of call university. When it ended, university had no meaning, and therefore it didn't return a value. Okay, but what can we do if we still want university to work? Well, we can remove this var keyword right here. This is a bit of a bad habit for JS coding, but I'm just going to show you how it works and what it does. So if you remove this var keyword and still assign university without any notion to JavaScript, what JavaScript will do, it will assign var university itself in the global context, like we did with the chapter keyword. And when we do that, if we now call university, then univ equals VIT. Now the declaration of var univ gets its value VIT when we called upon the function, and now univ can give us the value of VIT in the global context also. This is the basis of many things in JavaScript, that is OOPS programming or execution context and stacks, calling function, etc. So this thing, these practices are not as good as it's considered, obviously, but I was just about to show you this because this is the basics of the next portion that we're going to cover on the next tutorial. Okay, so this is the final thing that I want to show. This is printing using JS. Many times using web pages, you might have noticed that in some sites there is a button usually which says print. Now print extracts all the files that you needed to print, and it saves in a PDF, or it uses a printer to print it out. Okay, so how to do that in JavaScript? This is a really cool feature and I wanted to show you. So let's just go ahead. I guess it's opening in the background. Well, it already opened because Chrome was in the background, obviously. So here goes the content of the first word goes here. If I click on print this, I see just the first div here. Well, in my context, it's the first word. Okay, so we can save it as a PDF, or we can use a printer to print it out. Okay, and then if we go back, we can have the second div, the second word goes in here, and print everything, prints everything on this page. So how does that work? Let's see with what I have in scriptings. Okay, so that's how you use it. I'm just going to expand it a little bit, and this is the content you see on your page. In every button we have an on-click event, and we have assigned a particular function will deal with this stuff. So this function is called print screen, print src, or print source, whatever you want to call it. And in what I have done is I've created a div which stores all of the body. Okay, and this div goes from here to here. It stores everything inside this div, and I named this div with the ID whole page. Okay, and you can now save everything inside this whole page. Okay, so div ID equals first div is the name of this particular div. Div ID equals to second div is the name of this particular div. And now by using print screen, I'm going to show you what do we do to print this screen right now. Well, this whole feature is now I'm going to use is similar to what you guys have been doing in C language in the swap function. Okay, I'm just going to do one thing, that copy all this stuff what I have on my page right now to a variable. Okay, all the elements to a variable, stores it, and then convert this whole page to a small section of what I want. Like for example, if I want to print the second element, what I'll do is I'll copy complete body of mine and store it in a variable. Now I have a backup, a save of it. Okay, and the second element, what I'll do with that, I'll declare the whole page as just this second element. Okay, so it will assign the whole page but as the second element. So if I click this button right here, you can see that this whole page turned to just this portion. Okay, the content of the second word goes here. So I converted this whole page to just the second element, and now I take the print of this particular page. And we're going to use print method of JavaScript to take the print of my complete window. And how is it going to happen? That I'm going to show in here. Where save, I'm declaring inside print screen. Every time print screen is run, save is going to be created, and document.body.innerHTML, all of it, the inner HTML inside the body, is going to be saved inside save. Okay, and in the variable to be print particular ID, which I am given whole page, first div, second div, any one of these three can go inside in place of the school. And I'm going to take this element with this get elements by ID selector, get element by ID selector, and with that I'm going to take the inner HTML of it, and I'm going to do the document.body.innerHTML equals to be printed. Okay, so whatever I have extracted, I'm setting this to be printed, and now my whole page gets converted to just this portion. And after I execute this command, that is the printing command, that window.print, because now my window contains just the part that I want to print. Okay, so I print window.print, and after printing, okay, let me just show you. After I click on save or do anything with that, after that is completed, it then gives me document.body.innerHTML equals to save. So whatever we had as a backup, now we added that back to our page, and our page is back to normal. Okay, so this is how this feature works, and it's just a little bit of trick. It doesn't require a lot of JavaScript, it requires a bit of coding skills. Okay, that the fact that how you're going to make things work. So now that you've seen enough, JavaScript is all about practice. It's all about making things clear and getting these basics into the advanced level. Okay, you'll see a lot of different things, tons of different methods, and many things along your way. But you should always be researching new things and coming up with different ideas to get yourself better with this programming language. Okay, I guess this was just for now. This was all of it that I wanted to discuss before moving on to the advanced level. If you have any doubts, don't hesitate to drop it in the comment section. We are here to help, and till then, happy programming.